Can you afford to be an electrician? All right, so I get a lot of messages from people that are either trying to transition like out of the military into being into the trades, or they've been working at some tech job, computer programming, whatever, and they're in their like mid to late 40s and they want to start all over with a new career path. And they're always asking, can I actually afford it? I know it's like a huge pay dump going down into an apprentice environment. As apprentices, you don't really make that much for a while until you get your license and then you start making real money. So the question is, can you actually afford to be an electrician? A lot of times you're going to see out there on like Facebook and TikTok, these like interviews with electricians, usually union electricians, that are like, oh, we're getting paid $120,000 a year, or, we have these great packages. And while that is all true, it largely depends on the area, and it depends on if you're union or non-union. So how electricians get paid for, I would say, the last 10 years, like 15 years maybe, the cost of living has risen, but the wages that we all get paid have not kept pace with that. So there's a lot of companies out there that, 15 years ago, they were paying brand new apprentices $15 an hour. And today they're still paying apprentices $15 an hour when you come into the company. But it's like twice as expensive to live. So what I wanted to do was talk about the cost of living and how much you should expect to be paid as an apprentice to evaluate with your own life situation if it's even worth you doing it. So what I did is I did some ChatGPT search. This is not PhD level thorough research presented in a paper to a community. This is just me talking to ChatGPT. I did use the deep research function with ChatGPT, so I was able to give it a lot of information, have it ask me questions to evaluate things and give it more and more information. So I think these are pretty largely accurate. I did 3 different locations. I did San Francisco, which is a really expensive place to live. I did Austin, which I think is kind of a middle ground. And then I wanted to pick a lower ground, but I didn't want to pick somewhere that's like way out in the sticks because that doesn't really apply to most people. So I picked Memphis because Memphis is cheaper than Austin. Not by a whole lot, but it is a smaller city. So things are generally cheaper in Memphis. And what I did was I said, okay, we're going to have 2 different scenarios for these 3 locations. Scenario 1 is, let's say, an 18 to 24-year-old young adult that is living on their own. They have to afford rent somewhere. They have their own car. They've got their own groceries. They don't have a whole bunch of roommates. They're not living with mom and dad still. They are out on their own as a successful, maybe not quite successful, but like as a existing human adult on their own doing their thing, right? They're out of their parents' house. What do you need to get paid to live, to exist if you're that person? And I did that for each one of these areas. And then the second thing I did is I took, if you are maybe 25 to 34, you got a little bit more complex living situation. You probably have a kid or 2 kids. In these examples, I did 2 kids. You got a wife, you have a mortgage. So your rent, instead of like a $1,500 a month of rent, you got like $3,000 a month in mortgage. You have credit card debt. You have childcare expenses because you got to put the kids in daycare. You have a partner that also works and brings in an income. And so the all of the complexity of that, how much it costs to be a family and be an electrician, that's a starting journeyman. I wanted to cover that too. So we're going to look at both these situations. So to start out, to see if you can afford to be an apprentice in the first place, is let's look at the cost of living in certain areas. I particularly started with Austin, and the reason I even did this is because I have an electrical contracting company. I'm moving back to Austin in a couple of months. I've been up here in Massachusetts for 2 years, and I'm ready to just go back to Austin and hit the ground running and start hiring people. And so what I did is I started looking at the actual cost of living in Austin to figure out, what should these people be paid? Not what are the other companies, if I shop around, what are they paying people? What have I heard on a Facebook group or something that these people are getting paid? No, I want to know, if I hire a person, can I provide a life for that person? Is it affordable for them to even come and work for me? And am I paying them a good wage based off of just general standards of living? And so I would rather, I'd rather be on the high side, paying people more than any of the other companies around, but I'd rather not use other companies and what they're paying to determine what I should pay somebody. I'd rather look at the cost of life. So let's get into it. What I am going to do is start with Austin. Remember, these are 18 to 25-year-old kids, essentially. This is not figuring in a whole bunch of extra savings and putting money in crypto and having, snowboarding trips to Colorado. This is if you get an apartment, you have a car, you need gas, food, and basic essentials to live. This is how much money it costs to have those things. So then we're going to see what kind of a pay wage that you need to be able to afford those bills. And then once you climb through the ranks, you're going to obviously get paid more. So that's where all your savings and investing and all that stuff happen. But as a base level, what I put in for Austin, the market rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in or around Austin is $1,235 a month. Now, some of you in Austin might be like, oh, whoa, I'm paying $1,600 a month for my apartment. Well, yeah, if you live like in Austin proper, like downtown Austin, things are a lot more expensive. But if you're like in Cedar Park, Round Rock, Pflugerville, one of these surrounding areas, you're probably going to be able to see 1-bedroom apartments at that rate. So I think it's fair. You can find a place in that range, basically. Transportation, owning a car in Austin costs roughly $850 a month. It's typically car payment $300 to $400, auto insurance $150, gasoline $100. That might be a little on the low side. I think people are probably paying more than $100 in gas, but it kind of depends if you drive a lot or if not. So I just left it there. Roughly $854 a month we're looking for transportation. Utilities, around $300 to $330 a month. Groceries, $350 a month for, again, up in Massachusetts. Up here, it's more like $800 to $900 a month for 2 people and 3 dogs. It's really expensive up here. But in Austin, I think $350 a month for a single one human being, kid, child, man, lady, like $350 a month to buy groceries and responsibly pack yourself a lunch every day and actually eat. That's achievable. If you're door dashing every day and you're stopping at Chipotle every single day for lunch, that's not considering any of that crap. I'm saying to base minimally exist, $350 a month, I think is fair. And then other basic necessities, we added in like $150 to $200 for minimal discretionary expenses. So like toilet paper, if you need socks, underwear, stuff like that. So that gets the expenses that it's going to cost you every single month to be alive and live as a human adult young person in Austin, Texas. Now, I'm not going to read through these and do this whole thing for every single one of these examples because it's going to make this like an hour-long podcast. But I just wanted you to know how I was deriving the cost of living in these areas. So I did the same thing for Austin, for San Francisco, and Memphis. So for Austin, that comes to about $2,900 a month worth of bills that you have to be able to figure out. San Francisco was a lot higher. San Francisco and Boston are like the 2 most expensive places in the entire country to live. In San Francisco, we were looking at $4,800 a month. Memphis was on the low side. Memphis was $2,500 a month, so $400 a month cheaper to live in Memphis and exist as a single young adult human apprentice. So that was the total cost. Now, the next thing I did was I said, okay, then I need to figure out what a livable wage is to afford to pay those costs, not extra money, right? That's just to pay your bills. So for a person in Austin, single individual youngster, you should expect to get paid around $19.71. That is your gross amount. You need to see $16.75 on your paycheck every hour to be able to cover your bills, but your actual gross before taxes are taken out, what you need to negotiate when you go in to get a job should be $19.71 or more. So to understand, if you're an apprentice and you're in Austin, Texas, and you're going around calling people and they're like, yeah, we'll hire you at $13 an hour. No, dude, like you can't pay the bills, the very minimal bills it costs at that wage. Now, maybe you live with mom and dad and you don't have rent. That's like what we said, $1,200 a month. Boom, right off the top. So you might be able to afford working at that wage. If you have a kid, it's going to be way more expensive, right? You might have $500 a month in child support, and then you got all the extra food and everything that we have to do to feed the kid and diapers and all that. So you might actually need like $23 an hour. So you might need a second job because I don't know many people that are going to hire you at $23 an hour as a fresh apprentice that knows absolutely nothing. But this will help you figure out what you need in your life. Maybe this will tell you, shoot, I need to get a roommate. I can't afford if I'm being offered $16 an hour in Austin and it seems like an actually really great thing, but I can't afford to live that way. I might have to get a roommate, or I might have to go live with mom and dad, or I might have to get a second job. But it lets you know that rather than just being like, I'm just going to go in and whatever number they give me, I'm just going to take that number. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that. there's a certain range of things you're going to get paid. So like I know in Austin, Texas, there are some people getting paid $12 an hour as an apprentice. It's embarrassing. It's a joke. I'm sorry for those of you that got conned into that being your wage, but that's just, a lot of companies are like, whatever you want your wage to be, whatever you tell me, I'm just going to say, cool. And if that's a really low number, that's what you asked for. So be careful what you ask for. I think in Austin, like I would imagine $18 to $20 an hour for a starting apprentice in today's world is like the minimum. $20 kind of seems like a minimum, truthfully, because I don't want to just pay my people the bare minimum. I want to pay them enough so that they can live and exist. I don't have to worry about employees debating on whether they need to get a second job, and then they're going to start coming in late and tired all the time and working half-assed because they're so tired from having to have 2 jobs. I would rather them just be able to exist. Now, you can't factor in every single possible decision. Like people have kids when they're 18, like I did. That's my own problem. That's not, my boss does not need to factor that in and pay me even more money because of my life decisions. But to figure out base living as an employer, as an electrical contractor, I think it's really important for you to do. Even just to assess where you're paying people and where you're at, and is what you're paying people a good wage, regardless of what like XYZ Electric and this electric over here are doing. What are you doing? And are you being good to your employees? So that's my thoughts on it. All right. Then in San Francisco, it's way higher. For San Francisco, the amount that you need to be negotiating getting paid as a starting apprentice should be around $32.57. It just seems so high. It's a crazy number because I'm in Austin and it's literally, almost twice what it would cost in Austin. But $32.50 an hour is your gross amount that you can try to negotiate with a boss, knowing that you're only going to end up taking home about $27.70 an hour because your bills actually cost you $27.70 an hour. Then we had Memphis. Memphis, we need to take home $14.40 an hour. So it actually means our wage that we need to negotiate is $16.94 an hour. So we need to tell the boss, this is what I actually need. And they might say, that's stupid. I'm not paying you that. We don't pay anybody that. And then okay, well, maybe this isn't the company to go to. Or maybe I just need to find some roommates so that I can have this really cool job that I like, or need to get a second job or something like that. But $16.94 is kind of the cost of living for a human in your age group trying to live on their own, do their own thing, bootstrap their life without the help of a bunch of other people. Now, in the way to do this yourself, I really recommend don't just listen to these numbers that I'm telling you, because these numbers don't apply to you. They don't apply to literally anybody except for this one magical, weird situation that I just created. Everybody has different bills, right? Like my kid right now is in Austin. He was living in San Antonio and he had 5 roommates. So his rent was only $200 a month. And then once he moved to Austin, he started looking at rents. He's like, holy crap. This whole living on your own thing is like way more expensive nowadays, So you have to figure out what all your bills are. So the first step, I think you guys should take a piece of paper out if you're thinking about this stuff. Josh, if you're listening do this right now. Figure out every bill you have. What does your phone bill cost you every month? What are your credit cards? If you have any, what's your minimum payment that you're supposed to pay every single month? How much do you pay in groceries? And don't look at the DoorDash amount because that's stupid. Car insurance. If you have a car note, like if you financed a car and you're a young kid and somehow have great credit and you are financing a car, what's your car bill? Every single expense that you have, internet, all of it. Figure out what you would need to go out and live in an apartment. I would look around at apartment rates too in your town. Be like, what is a 1-bedroom apartment? You might have to call around to 4 or 5 places and just kind of see generally how nice of a place can I get and how much does that cost? Or what is the low end, really dingy crap in the area? And what is that? But write every single expense that you have. And that's the amount, that total amount. If it's $3,000 a month, that is the amount it costs you to live as an adult every month. So then you take that number and you multiply it by 12 for 12 months. You'll get the annual amount of money that life costs you. Then what I would do is I would take that and divide that number by 52 weeks. And that shows you how much these bills cost you every single week. And then divide that by 40, and that shows you how much those bills cost you every single hour. Every work hour that you are at work, how much are you paying in life fees? And that lets you know what you need. So the dollar amount that you just broke down from annual down to weekly down to hourly at 40 hours a week is the wage that you need to have minimally. That is the net wage that you need to have on your paychecks. That's not the actual gross. So what I would do is figure out, like, if you come out to like $17 an hour is what you need, I would look at what number is 17 a 20% of. And even that, take out 20%. It depends on where you live. It depends on what tax bracket you're in. It depends on how many deductions that you claim on your W-2 when you file, on your W-4 when you get a new employer. If you have child support, all that stuff. So you got to figure out what all this stuff is for your life situation. So that's the challenge, right? Now, when you understand what that amount is for you, you can go out to employers and get job offers and be like, okay, this person's offering me 20. I really need $20.50. That's what I figured out. So I'm going to try to negotiate my wage to $20.50. Now, if you're in the union, you can't do any of this. Like the union's just set at what the union's at, like you've got kind of a structure that you have to go through. They provide a lot of the benefits for you. So you're going to probably have health insurance and a bunch of other things, medical, 401k, stuff like that a lot of these non-union guys, which is the vast majority of the industry, just don't have available to them. So you might have less flexibility in being able to negotiate what your salary is, but you have way better structure and more benefits. So that's kind of the trade-off that you get with the union environment. I'm talking about for the vast majority of the electrical industry, the other, 88 to 90% of electricians in the US. All right. So the next thing that I did was I did a family, right? So say that you're 25 to 34, you probably got a spouse, you have 2 kids, 2 car notes to pay off, 4 mouths to feed. So groceries are more. You probably have like a spouse that has college debt, maybe some loans to pay off. You're going to need health insurance for your family. Probably going to need daycare that you're going to have to pay for both the kids because both of the families work. This is just a really common living situation. I also added a 10% savings buffer. So these people are, families, like you got to have an emergency fund in case like your dishwasher goes out or you lose heat or something like that, or your car breaks down. You want to have some money saved up and you're probably saving for the future. So I've said a 10% savings every year so you can kind of live comfortably and you're not just like white knuckling it all the time. So for Austin, this ends up being $102,000 a year or $8,500 a month. And that figure seems really high, but when you consider, a mortgage might be like $3,000 a month. I mean, that's almost half of that. And then if you got 2 car notes that are like $500 a piece, and then car insurance at $350 a piece for each one of them, now you're starting to, we're starting to climb. So it's really not outside of the realm of possibility with $1,000 in healthcare every month and $1,600 in like daycare, all this stuff adds up. So anyways, I think that's pretty fair. What it says for Austin is that you need $33 an hour. And that, again, that is gross. So you're not going to actually see 33 on your paycheck. You're going to see less than that. But at a gross rate, at an actual wage that you can negotiate with an employer, $33 an hour for a journeyman electrician, I think it's actually a really good wage, especially if you're getting a company phone, company truck, healthcare, all the stuff. Then we go to San Francisco. That is $47.90. So $48 an hour is for you to live kind of minimally as a brand new journeyman. That just ends up being right under $100,000 a year for gross. So that's the pay you would want to negotiate. And then Memphis, we said was $24.59. So $24 an hour just to get by as like an entry journeyman electrician that's got a family. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, my whole point in doing this is for you to be able to assess for yourself if you can afford to be an electrician. You have to know what your bills are. So I would sit down, again, piece of paper and a calculator, and really think about all of it. In my life, I use a daily Excel sheet. I know what I get paid every week. So every 7th row, I put in how much money I bring in. And I know when all my bills are due. I've got everything on auto pay in my life. So like all my credit cards, auto pay, my rent and my mortgage on my house, everything's auto pay. So I know when those things are going to hit. And so I can put a small little formula in Excel. And if you guys want to know more about doing this, I guess like send me an email. I can tell you about how to make a bunch of cells equal a sum and give you a total. But that's really all I did. And I just figured out on a daily basis, what do I need to live? And then I can extrapolate that out as far as I want to see in 3 years, where am I going to be? But you have to know your finances to be successful and to like go get a job somewhere. You should know what you need to live, not just what you think you're worth. So there are these 2 things to compensation for you. It's what do you need and what do you think you're actually worth? Because what you need and what you're worth could be 2 very different things. You might need $30 an hour and be an 18-year-old apprentice and you ain't worth anything. So sorry, you're gonna have to figure out a different thing with your life. but you might be an 18-year-old kid that's getting a job offer of $25 an hour. You're not worth that, but you're getting paid that. Or you might only need $10 an hour, but you're going to get paid $18 an hour. And then now you have money to do the crypto thing, to go snowboard and to do all the fun stuff. But you need to figure out what your life needs, because that's not going to change too drastically. Unless you're moving every year and you're buying new stuff and getting into more debt, which I also caution all of you youngsters, don't do. Figure out a way to live stably for a long time, save up some money, take your credit seriously, never miss your payments, try to pay your stuff on time. But figure out what you need. And you have to know that before you go out into the world and start asking people to pay you money. Because even as an electrical contractor, I have to figure out what my business costs me. When I charge a customer, I figure out what does it cost for me to be in business. I got gas I got to put in these trucks. I got insurance that I got to keep on the vehicles. I got general liability insurance. I got to hire, keep people employed. So I got all these wages, materials, everything. So I figure out how much does this business cost me every month. First thing I do. And then I extrapolate it out and I go, okay, it cost me this much a year. So what does this cost me hourly? And I work back, divide by 52, divide by 40, boom. And I get a business costs me, I don't know, $65 an hour that my doors are open as a company. So I know the minimum that I have to just break even, white knuckle it, barely survive is that 65. That's not my actual number. I'm just using that random number. So figuring out how much do you need to charge for things and be profitable, it all starts with knowing what you make. So enough ranting at you. I hope you guys got something out of that. Love you, crazy people. I'll see you in the next one.